In this video, I'm going to walk you through a cash flow budget. And we're going to start by understanding the context of the cash flow budget that I pulled up on the screen right here for you. So I'm making this video as a part of a class, and the general context for the class is based on the reality of farming currently as I'm recording this video. And that reality is that the majority of farmers get the majority of their income from off-farm sources. And if you actually start looking at the structure of farming in the United States, the structure of production agriculture, you'll see that most farms are operating as a hobby, as a side hustle, as supplemental income, and there's a large amount of off-farm income that is used to cash flow the household and support the household that's living on that farm. And the farm is a supplemental activity. And what I've got here is a perfect example of a supplemental activity like that. This is a cash flow budget for a backyard bird farm, an egg operation. Now, I based this budget on a budget that I got from the University of Maryland. This is the third video in a series. I'll tell you more about all that later on in the video. So what I want to talk about is the overall concept of a cash flow budget, why you should be doing a cash flow budget, even for something like a side hustle. The purpose of the cash flow budget is to look out ahead of time, look at the entire year and break it down into smaller time periods and look specifically at how the cash is moving around inside the business. Because there's going to be some months or some quarters where you've got a lot of cash coming in relative to your cash going out. Revenue versus expenses in cash terms, and you've got to be very efficient during those months when you have cash, because there are going to be months where you have very little cash coming in and a lot of cash going out. And the idea behind a cash flow budget is simply to plan your cash, and this is of vital importance for any business because there are profitable businesses out there that are liquid and profitable and doing well that can't sustain themselves long term because they run out of cash. And the way to get around that is to plan to run out of cash. And we're going to run through this spreadsheet and I'm going to let you know what I'm talking about right now. So let's jump into the spreadsheet. So like any budget, you've got to have a title at the top so that the people reading the budget know what's going on. So this is a cash flow budget for a business. I'm just calling that business the Backyard Bird Farm. And it is for a specific year. So this is the cash flows for the year 2025. And I'm going to break it down by the quarter. Now you can break it down by the week, you can break it down by the month. A week is not very common. Usually it's monthly or quarterly. A week is just too small of a unit of measure unless you've really got a lot of detailed data on your historic cash flows. So we've got 4 quarters, quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. And the first thing we list is the beginning cash. And so this is the cash you have on hand. Now let's talk about that word cash for a second. That word cash is kind of a antiquated term. Imagine a time when cash actually meant, cash, right? That you have like in a mattress under your bed or something. And in the modern context, that's not what this means. This means money sitting in a bank account. In the modern world we live in now, it's zeros and ones sitting on a computer that represent money that belongs to you. So this isn't necessarily actual cash sitting around the house or sitting inside the business or sitting in a cash register. This means I've got a bank account and it's got money in it, and we call that cash because it operates just like cash, meaning you can access the money quickly. And so we start off with a beginning cash or a beginning balance in our main bank account, because if you're running a business, even a side hustle, even a hobby off to the side, you need a separate account to monitor that business so that you can have more control over what's going in and out of the business. And at the end of the year, when you look at your record, you can see what you've accomplished by looking at how the cash moved in and out of the business. And our goal with this cash flow budget is to look into the future and plan so that we can understand how that cash is going to move in and out of the business every quarter for the next year. So we start off with some amount of cash, in this case $200. I just kind of made that number up so that we have a number. And then we list the good news first. Every budget does this. You list the good news first. And the first thing is eggs. And we got a number 950. Now I got that number by making a couple of educated guesses on how the cash flows would behave based on the budget that I based this off of. So the basic idea here is that I'm looking forward at my production cycle, and I realize that I'm going to go out and I'm going to buy some baby chicks at some point, probably in quarter number 2. And I'm not going to have any egg production from those in quarter number 2 or quarter number 3. They have to grow and mature before I start getting a lot of good egg production. I'll have diminished egg production during those time periods. And the way this particular one is set up, if you remember the previous budgets, we basically got a 2-year cycle where I'm buying chicks in 1 year, growing them out for a time period, and then at the end harvesting them. So what's going to happen in quarter 1 is I'm just going to be producing eggs. Now, I'm not an egg production expert. I have no idea what egg production is like during January, February, and March of the year. This number could be way off. And if you're actually doing this on your own, you need to actually do some research and figure out when the eggs are gonna be produced. So this number could be 0 for all you know. If I understand my structure of my own business, I should know how many eggs I'm going to produce in a given year. And the thing I want to point out with this budget, I didn't explicitly make it so in the spreadsheet, but these numbers in the spreadsheet are all in dollars. So I didn't produce 950 eggs during the first quarter, or I'm not projecting to produce 950 eggs during the first quarter. I'm projecting to sell $950 worth of eggs. So this $950 is a dollar amount. It's a revenue coming in, and I'm not projecting to sell any stewing hens. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add up my total cash inflows. I have an error in my spreadsheet. Let's fix that. I'm going to take this number right here. This should say total cash inflow. And this should be the sum of my eggs and my stewing hens. So there's a small error in my spreadsheet, and I just fixed it. And so basically, I've got $950 coming into the business during the first quarter. Then I list my cash available. So the cash available is the cash it had at the beginning plus the cash inflow. So this formula in the spreadsheet is just adding up the cash inflow in cell C12 and the beginning cash in cell C7. And so I get $1,150. So what that means is during quarter 1, I'm going to have $1,150 to play with to cover my expenses. Now, when it's going to arrive inside of quarter 1, if that's of a concern to you, then you want to do a monthly cash flow budget so that you can make sure that you're timing things well monthly. Now we have cash outflows. I'm not going to buy any new chicks in that first quarter. I'm not going to buy any starter feed in that first quarter because I've already started my chicks and they're already in the layer phase. I'm not going to buy any grower feed because they've already grown and they're in layer phase. So I'm now going to buy $300 worth of layer feed in that first quarter. And I'm going to write that down as a cash outflow. I'm going to buy $5 in supplies. I have no idea what amount of supplies I'm going to need to buy in the first quarter, but I'm going to go ahead and put $5 there because I need a number there to work with, and it could be wrong. Who knows? Labor. I'm going to imagine I have to pay someone to work for me during that quarter. That's important. I'm going to put down $20 in maintenance. Again, I'm not sure what my maintenance is actually going to be, but I need to put a number down so I have something to work with. If I have some reason why I believe maintenance will be higher, so if I project to always do a bunch of maintenance in the first quarter, the number would be higher. It's based on the projections of your own business. And if you've run the business a few years, you should have historical knowledge and have a really good idea what that number is going to be. Interest. We've imagined that we've borrowed some money and I'm putting down interest expense. Again, this is just based on a previous budget. I'll make sure I give you a link to it here somewhere so that you can see it and reference it. And so we've got a total cash outflow. So this is what you need to imagine. I've got $1,150 available that I can spend. It's either already there or it's going to arrive in the first quarter. And I'm projecting to spend $662. And if you're doing the math in your head, you see that you've got, over $500 of extra cash, right? You've got money that you don't need. And what you've got to remember is that when you have money that you don't need, you can't just let it sit in your account. Yes, I guess you could, but if you're like running a business and trying to think very strategically, you're going to want to move that money to a place where it can do the most good. For example, you might have bills you need to pay in your personal checking account, And so you want to take this money out of the business account, move it into the personal account so you can cover some expense. Hypothetically, for example, you've got to do something with it. So the next part right here is the important part of the cash flow budget. This area here is the reason why we're messing around with the cash flow budget in the first place. Because we need to know before the first quarter begins a reasonable projection of where we're going to end at the end of the first quarter. And if we're going to end the first quarter in a hole, if we're going to run out of cash, we know we've got to move cash into the business. Either we can move it in or out, like from our personal account into the business account, or a savings account in the business. It's not uncommon for a business to have a checking account and a savings account. Or I might have to borrow money, or I might find it wise to go ahead and pay down on loans to save an interest expense in the future. And in this example right here, I'm just going to pull the cash out because that's a pretty easy and straightforward thing to do. The question is, how much cash can I pull out? Well, I've got a number here, 450, that I did before I put the video together, but just a second ago I caught a mistake in my calculation. And so I don't know that if I want to pull 450 bucks out. Here's what I do know. I do know that I need to keep a pad in the account for unexpected expenses. And so most businesses will have some rule of thumb that they use in order to know how big of a pad they need to keep in the business. For our example, I'm going to say, you know what? I want to keep 200 bucks in the account. That way I've got 200 bucks in the account if I need it or if something unexpected comes up. So I'm going to now adjust the cash in, the cash out, the additional borrowing, and the additional repayments such that I've got $200 left in the account at the end of the first quarter. So let's plug in 200 right here. Leaves me 287. Let's plug in 250. There we go. So the plan is at the end of the quarter, I'm going to end up with 500 bucks roughly, almost 500 bucks. And I'm going to pull 250 of it out and leave 237.5 in the account to help me get going in the next quarter. Speaking of the next quarter, let's look at the next quarter. Let's go to the top of our spreadsheet. And we have a beginning cash of 237.5. I'm going to click on the formula so you can see that. So what I did was I just used a cell reference so that the ending cash from the previous pops up to the beginning cash. So I don't have to enter a number there. The sheet's going to do it for me automatically. Now I had a mistake here. If you remember, I had this spreadsheet, this cell had the wrong formula. So I'm going to fix that. I did a second ago. Going to drag that over and fix all of these. So now here's the scenario. In the second quarter, I had those stewing hens. These are my older hens that are less productive, that I'm going to take them and harvest them so that someone can cook them and eat them. And I'm projecting I can sell these things for 200 bucks total. So I'm selling 200 bucks worth of hens, not 200 hens. I added my cash inflow, 600 plus 200 is 800. Add that to my beginning cash, and I've got just over $1,000 available to spend, which is good news because this is the quarter that I've got to replenish my stock for next year. So I have to buy some chicks. I have to buy some starter feed. Now my layer feed's going to be less because I have less layers in this quarter. I've got chicks instead of layers. Supplies, this is going to be an expensive quarter because I'm going to need more supplies to help me with those chicks. In fact, the $10 number is probably too small. Maybe I need to make it 20. In case I got to buy a bulb or something or replace anything when I bring the new chicks into production. Labor, I'm projecting more labor in the second quarter because there's going to be more work involved. It's not just a matter of checking on the eggs. You're also going to check on the new livestock. Maintenance, again, I just threw a number in there for 20 because I wasn't really sure what I would need to put there. And interest is the same thing. It's a constant amount. So now what we have is we have $806 going out. And here's what's really important. I had 800 that came in. I had 806 that went out. If I was not managing my cash flow, I would have a $6 hole right now. But I managed my cash flow in the first quarter, so I don't have a $600 hole. So moving down here, I see that earlier when I put the spreadsheet together, I pulled too much cash out of the business when I was making the example off camera, but I can just adjust this because I'm in that planning phase where I'm trying to figure out what I need to be spending my money on. So the reality here is that I can't pull any money out. I could pull 30 bucks out. I want to keep at least 200 in the account. And so during the second quarter, I can't bring money out of the business into some other purpose. And it's important to know that. And if you hadn't been thinking ahead and looking out into the future and planning your cash, you would look at this and go, I don't have enough money. The idea behind the cash flow budget is you do all the numbers, and the important part is this section right here. And this section is the section where you plan to manage your cash. That's important. Okay, my ending cash is $231. And that's going to be the beginning cash in the next quarter. And again, it's just a cell reference to pick that up. I'm going to project to sell 700 bucks worth of eggs. No stewing hens. Add that up and you get 700. Add that to my beginning cash. I got 931. So I have $931 to work with in the third quarter. I got money to spend though. I got to buy some grower feed. I got to buy some layer feed. I've got supplies. I've got labor. I've got all this stuff I have to deal with. And I'm going to have $742 flowing out. And here's what I want to point out to you. I had $700 coming in. I had $742 going out. Luckily, I had that beginning cash of $231. So I'm managing my cash flow here. That's the purpose of this cash flow budget, is to help you manage that cash flow so that you don't make decisions in the first quarter that kill your ability to get work done in the third quarter. All right, cash transfers. My original plan before I caught the error in my spreadsheet was to pull 150 bucks out. I can't do that. In fact, if I pull 0 out, I have 188.5. Okay, that's a problem, y'all, because I said I want to keep a $200 pad in the account, which means I have to take cash in and I got to move some money in. I'm going to move 25 bucks in. And again, it's not because I need 25 bucks, it's because I want to make sure I have 200 in the account in case something comes up. I've always got enough cash to handle some small things that pop up. The calculation here is pretty straightforward. It's my total cash available here minus my cash outflows right here, plus any cash I move into the business minus any cash I move out. Sometimes you would just add all these and use negative numbers in the cells, just so you know. And then I add any additional money that I borrow if I feel the need to take a loan out to handle my cash flow, minus extra money I pay down on my loans. So you just add those up and you get a number, 213.5. And again, the magic here is what happens in this section here. In this section here, right, so this is the budget for the year 2025. What's going on is I'm sitting down in December of 2024 and I'm projecting 2025, and I'm sitting here in December of 2024 saying, you know what, I'm going to move 25 bucks into the account at the beginning of the third quarter to make sure I've got enough cash on hand to get the job done. So 213.5 is the ending cash, and once again the beginning cash is just a cell reference to just move that number up. Going to project to sell 950 bucks worth of eggs, going to have 950 bucks cash coming in. Add that to the 213 I started with, I'm going to have 1,100, almost 1,200 bucks of cash to work with in the fourth quarter. Then I've got all my expenses. They total up. I'm going to have 662.5 flowing out. And now I get to decide how I want to move the money around to make sure I have sufficient cash in the fourth quarter. And my rule is, for this example, is I want to leave a couple hundred bucks in the account. So let's say I pull 300 out. I pull 300 out, I got 201 cash available, and that 201 beginning or ending cash in 2025 will be my beginning cash in 2026. And that's the cash flow budget. And again, the important thing here is this area here where I manage my cash flow. Now I want to point a couple of things out to you. If you were to look at the previous budgets that I put up for this series of budgets on a backyard chicken, these illustrations, you'll notice that the backyard chicken budget lost money, right? The backyard chicken operation, it really wasn't big enough and efficient enough to make any money. Again, this is a side hustle. This is a fun thing to do on the side, more of a hobby than an actual business. It could scale up and become one. I showed you in the previous budgets how to do that. And I'll give you a link to those if you want to see how you can possibly scale them up and adjust them to make some money. But the business lost money. But if you're paying close attention, you're looking at this and you're saying, yeah, it lost money, but you've also pulled out over $500 to take home from the business. How can you lose money if you pulled out $500? Here's how. A cash flow budget only detects, right? You only write down cash expenses. What does that even mean? There are two types of expenses. Expenses that you have to pay for with cash, right, with money, and expenses that accrue even if you don't have to pay for them. Specifically, I'm talking about depreciation. Depreciation is a non-cash expense. This operation had to have a pretty sizable chicken coop and some pretty decent fencing, because this operation could have 100 birds in one backyard at any given time. That's not a trivial number of birds. Definitely too much for most lots in town. Depreciation doesn't go in your cash flow because you don't cut a check or give someone money for the depreciation. It's just where your asset loses value. And that's an important distinction. You can cash flow a business that still loses money because of the non-cash expense depreciation. I hope that helps clear up what goes into a cash flow budget. If you want to learn more about these chicken budgets, check on this playlist right over here, and I'll see you next time.